So for wireframing our app screens, I'm going to be working inside of the same document we have the style guide just for now. Later on, I'll make this its own file, but since we're going to be working very heavily back and forth between the two, updating the style guide as we progress, I'm going to do it in the same file. So I'm just going to navigate over here into the pasteboard, and I'm going to hit A on my keyboard, and I'm going to select the iPhone XR/XS Max screen, and that's the screen that we're going to be designing this app in. I'm just going to drag this over to give us plenty of space. We'll go over about 500 pixels from our style guide. And we're first going to be designing the home screen of the app. I like to design this first as a good starting point. That way it kind of sets the tone for the rest of the screens. It's kind of my main screen that the user is going to be on, so I want to focus on that first. So the first thing I like to do is set up a grid. So if you have the artboard selected, here you can check the grid layout. And this is default 4 columns, but we're going to switch this over to 2. We got to go down here and remove the margin spacing. So I'm just going to go ahead and remove that. And then I'm going to set the column width to 20. So that is what we're doing so far. So we have columns and we have 0 on the margin down here. We have 20 pixel width, and then we have 374 for the gutter width, which is the space in between these. And the reason I'm doing this is when we drag out, for example, a rectangle, if I hold Alt or Option with that rectangle selected, you'll see we have 20 spacing on each side. So these kind of give us a good starting point for making sure we have enough real estate here on the left and the right for all of our elements. That way nothing is too close to the phone screen edge. So 20 pixels, 17 pixels is usually something I like to go with on the side. In this case, we're going with 20. So I'm just going to delete that rectangle, and we'll select this home artboard once more. Another thing I like to do is I like to select this icon, which lets me set the margin individually. Here on the top, I'm going to drop this down about 70 pixels. Now, depending on how much room you want up here for the little notch on the phone, as well as the status bar, that is up to you. I'm going to set this to 70 pixels for now because I want plenty of space up here. So this is the grid that we're going to be using throughout each screen that we're going to design, from low fidelity to high fidelity. And if you don't know what a low fidelity wireframe is, it's very simple. This is an example of one. It's using basic shapes to represent the elements, and it's kind of the blueprint that you're going to go off and make the high fidelity wireframe from. So high fidelity would be close to the finished product, if not the finished product, something you would hand off to the client and then begin revisions. So we're going to start with the low fidelity wireframe, very similar to this. We're going to use basic shapes to lay out the elements on the screen, and then we're going to go into a high fidelity or the finished design. And basically who you ask in the industry may give you a different answer between low fidelity and high fidelity and what they actually are. Some people prefer to have their low fidelity wireframes a little bit more detailed. Maybe they have text in there instead of just representing them with rectangles like in this example. That's completely up to you. Again, I said this in the creative process section of the course. It's about finding what works best for you. So that's what we're going to be doing in this wireframe section. We're going to be doing a very low fidelity with basic shapes, and then we're going to turn it into a high fidelity version. So let's go ahead and get started. So starting off our design, we're going to need some kind of navigation at the top. That's very common with apps. And so we're going to be using 24 pixel by 24 pixel icons. So I'm going to drag out a square and set that to 24 by 24 pixels. I'm going to remove the border, and I'm just going to set this to this default gray that we created earlier. So that's going to symbolize all of our icons for now. And I'm going to hold Alt and drag a duplicate of that here into the top right corner. And you'll notice that I'm using the grids here. So here's the top line we have, and then here is the 20 spacing on the side. So I'm lining that up with both of these icons right there in that corner. So below that, we're going to need some kind of card. And this card could be for displaying discounts or whatever the client wants to display at that time or that day. So this is going to be changed frequently. So we're going to want a card to display this. So I'm going to drag out a rectangle. And this rectangle, will size this up later. But for now, I'm just going to leave that how it is and use the eyedropper tool and grab that gray. And then we can remove the border. As far as the spacing goes, we won't get too detailed, but for now we'll set 50 pixel spacing in between these navigation elements and this card section. Below this, we're going to have another section showing the top designers that our app's going to have. So let's grab a rectangle, and I'm just going to drag this out, and then I'm going to grab these little round icons here. That's going to let me set the border radius. So we're just going to drag those in so it's nice and round like that on the edge. We can remove the border and grab the fill that we're using up there. Again, we'll just do about 50 spacing in between these sections. It doesn't have to be perfect. So since that's going to be a text that's going to say something like top designers, we're going to need some way of displaying those. And since we already have a card up here at the top, we can just use simple profile icons. So let's grab a circle and hold shift to make it a perfect circle. And we'll just drag out a sizable circle. For now, we'll set it to 100 pixels. We may increase that or decrease that later. And then again, we'll set it to that gray color we're using. And then we'll just put that about 20 pixels or so below that. And we're gonna wanna let the user swipe back and forth to just scroll through a bunch of the top designers on the platform. So I'm gonna hit repeat grid, and it's gonna allow me to drag this over, and we'll just drag that to the edge. So that kind of looks like it's repeating off the edge so somebody can swipe on that. We'll just continue on. I'll hold Alt and drag out a duplicate rectangle. Again, 50 spacing between our different sections. This section will just have something else. We'll have some cards of some sort. So we'll just hold shift and we'll just create a square. Again, remove the border and apply that gray fill that we are using. And once more, I'm gonna hit repeat grid and I'm just gonna drag this off the screen just like that. So again, we'll want the user to swipe and drag back and forth between these cards. And finally, we'll have one more section. Maybe it's some kind of article. So we'll just put another text and we'll grab this rectangle and repeat it. So now we're repeating elements, so that way we don't have to create things over and over again. So once we develop this card, we'll just use that down here as well. That way it'll save us some time and it'll keep things nice and consistent. So we're gonna grab some of these elements that are below titles. So this card, for example, we'll grab as well. I'm gonna hold shift and grab this, and I'll grab these rectangles in this card. And we're just gonna lighten them up just to get another gray going in this design so we can separate those out a little bit. So these are our titles. They need to be darker. They need to be better visible. So just doing a 2-color design for now. You don't have to add this to your swatches. Any gray will work as long as you can tell that they're 2 separate grays. So I think this will work for our home screen. We can refine this later on as we move into making this a high fidelity wireframe, which is what we're going to work on in the next lesson for this home screen. So I'll see you guys in that one. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next lesson.